Hey guys, Lewis here, and in this video I'm going to run you through the keyword research tool, Longtail Platinum Cloud, and I'll go over the main features of this tool as well as highlight what I liked and what I didn't like along the way. So let's get into it. Now, if you're at all familiar with the desktop version of Longtail Pro, you'll probably be surprised at how different this interface feels. Maybe I'm a little biased because I've adjusted to the older version, but it just doesn't feel quite as intuitive as that version. Although you can go through a live tutorial by clicking this button over here, I'm sure it would be helpful to some people, especially if you've never used a keyword research tool before. Now, when you compare it to, say, Keyword Finder's interface, which is another keyword research tool that we reviewed, it just doesn't quite live up. It's not on the same level. But at the same time, it's definitely not the worst interface that I've seen either. So overall, I'd say it's pretty neutral in the interface area. So let's start a new project so I can take you through this. And for this example, I'll create a new project for the vegan niche. So I just type in the project name here and click Add Project. Now we'll start entering seed keywords. And by the way, that's one of the great things about Longtail Platinum is that you can enter multiple seed keywords and run them as a single search. I've always liked that about Longtail Pro, and I'm pleased to see that it was carried through to this version as well. Anyway, moving on, I already have a list of seed keywords, so I'm going to paste those in here. And I need to point out something right away because even though you're only allowed 5, it doesn't tell you that initially. And if you try to run a search, you'll get a message telling you that it's too many and it will just go ahead and use the first 5. Now that's obviously really annoying if you've typed out more than 5 because the field will go blank and you'll have to type them in again. So that's just something to keep in mind. So before I run the search, I need to talk about these fields below. These are actually pre-filters, as in filters you set in place to limit the number of results you get back. And that's really important to understand with this tool because unlike the desktop version, it's not an open field. You have a limit on the number of keywords you can request based on your membership quota. And you can see the quota at the top of the page here. And since I'm on the medium plan, I can request up to 25,000 keywords per month. The cheapest plan gives you 10,000 and the most expensive plan gives you 60,000. Now, I say it's important because whatever keyword suggestions you get back will be deducted from your quota. And if you don't use these pre-filters, you're going to use your quota up very, very quickly. And since it takes a whole month to reset, you definitely need to watch that. I should say that the guys behind the tool claim that these quotas are very reasonable and that it shouldn't affect the majority of their users. I'm not sure I agree with that, particularly if you haven't refined your research process yet. It doesn't leave much room for error in my opinion. So first, I'm going to put in a maximum of 1,000 results per keyword. You'll probably want to have this a lot higher when you're doing this, but since this is a demo, I'm just going to stick to 1,000. I'm also going to set a minimum search volume of 500 and a maximum of 5,000. And of course, you can set pre-filters for suggested bid and advertise a competition if you want to. For now, I'm just going to click retrieve and let that run. And most of the time, this is actually much faster than it is on the desktop version. Usually, it only takes a few seconds, which is actually very, very good. Now, the first thing I need to point out with these results is the search volumes. Since Google updated their keyword planner to show broad ranges for close variants, it really disrupted the keyword research market, and the desktop version of Longtail Pro was one of the tools that were made almost redundant as a result. People really stopped using it. Unfortunately, as you can see, search volumes are intact here because they've since moved to a third-party provider for the web-based app. So that's really good news for cloud users. Now, one of the biggest features of Longtail Platinum is the keyword competitiveness score, which, if you don't know, is a metric that represents how difficult it is to rank for a given keyword. Unlike the desktop version, this score is actually calculated automatically whenever you run a search, which is obviously a really good thing. But more than that, it now supports data sharing in a sense that if someone else has already calculated that score, you'll see it as well, and the tool doesn't have to do that every time. And overall, that gives you a massive speed increase and it makes for a much faster keyword research experience. So that's a really big step up for the tool, in my opinion. Okay, so we've got our results here, and even though we used some pre-filters initially, this is where you want to bring in the post filters just here. And one of the key filters is actually keyword competitiveness, because it allows you to remove any keywords that are obviously too hard to rank for based on that score alone. So to do that, you want to set it to exclude KC greater than, and here is where you need to get an idea of what kind of score you need to exclude. This tool actually helps you with that. So if we go up here, you can add your domain name to get a custom recommendation for target keyword competitiveness. And I'll show you what that means. So I'll click add domain, put in authorityhacker.com, and then click save. Now, it gives us back two scores that have been calculated based on data from Majestic. So it updates in real time, which is really useful. And we have two scores because the lowest of these scores is what you should be aiming below if you're not prepared to do any link building, and the highest of these two scores if you are prepared to do a bit of link building. Now, I'm always up to build some links, so I'll type in the higher of these two numbers, and I'll also add a bit of padding to make it to round it up to 45, because these scores are never 100% accurate, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Now, I'll just click this green plus to apply that. So essentially, assuming that you've taken the time to set up these filters properly, you should have a very viable set of keywords to shoot for now. And what I'll do is sort by keyword competitiveness to show the lowest scores and the easiest keywords right at the top. And I want to highlight something here because we've got a keyword with 880 monthly searches, which is vegan tiramisu, and it has a keyword competitiveness score of 18, which is really quite low. So what I do next is dive into the Serp Analysis to do a manual review of this keyword and see how accurate that score is. To open the Serp Analysis, you have to click on the keyword, so I'll do that now. And as you've just seen, unlike the desktop version, this takes me to a new page. And not only that, but it doesn't even fit on my 13-inch screen. I'm in full screen mode right now, but usually I'd have to scroll down to get everything in, and I'd even have to scroll horizontally to get all the columns in here. So obviously not very efficient, but we'll put that aside for a second because I really need to highlight something else here, and that is the metrics. Now, you get all the metrics you need. This again uses Majestic data, so what we're primarily looking at here is trust flow and citation flow, as well as the links pointing to the site. And looking at this keyword, straight away we can see a bunch of missing data. And actually, if I run the same keyword through Keyword Finder, which I'm going to switch to now, you can see that I got a much higher score of 44. And the Moz metrics correlate with that as well. So this is not an easy keyword, and you do get some false positives with the long tail KC score, which is a fundamental problem and potentially a deal breaker if you're a beginner and you rely on this system to find keywords. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to Longtail Platinum again, and I'm going to hit the back button to go back to my keyword suggestions. And you'll notice I get taken to the top of the page. So I've lost my place, and now I have to scroll down to find exactly where I was. And on its own, that's not a huge deal, but when you combine it with the other issues that I just mentioned, I mean, it's just nowhere near as streamlined as it should be, and it really affects the whole keyword research process. Let's talk about tabbed research, and what I mean by tabs is being able to dive into the results of each seed keyword individually. So if I switch over to the desktop version, I've already set up an identical campaign. You can see on the left side here, I'm looking at all combined results, which is what you get by default in the cloud version. The difference here is that I can have my seed keywords in separate tabs. So if I click vegan brownies, I can dive into the results for vegan brownies and exclude everything else for the time being. If I switch back to the cloud version, there's absolutely no way to do that. Whatever seed keywords you give this tool, it will throw them in a single bucket, and you have to work with the list as a whole when you apply filtering. Again, not a massive problem, but it's something I find useful to have, and I was disappointed to see that it wasn't included here. Now, I want to talk about another new feature you get with this tool, and that's the rank value metric. The idea behind it is to tell you how much money you can expect to make per month by ranking number one for a given keyword. And that's based on AdWords suggested bid and an estimated click-through rate. Now, the problem with this system is it's all based on estimates. These values can vary so much, not only from site to site, but also page to page. And that means it's not really a feasible way to measure ROI. And I will say that you can set manual variables for this. So if I select this keyword and click Set Rank Value, so here I can set my own click-through rate for AdSense. I can change the earning method from AdSense to Amazon Affiliate and set an average order value. And I can even enter a custom figure based on the average visitor value. But again, these are based on averages. So even though you may want to use it to get an indication of commercial value, until they really refine how this works, it's a bit of a gimmick at this stage. Okay, one last thing I want to show you is the rank tracker. Now, this is in beta, so I assume that they have more plans for this down the road, but at the moment, it's pretty much exactly what you had with the desktop version. In other words, it's not very good. I can track up to 25 URLs, which is not very much, and even though I can see these buckets for where my overall pages are, it doesn't really give me a sense of how those pages have improved over time. The reporting is weak. It would be nice to see some visual elements that show progress over time. And really, if you compare this to the level of rank tracking you get with a tool like Ahrefs, which automatically tracks every single keyword you rank for over time, it just doesn't even scratch the surface. Overall, I wouldn't even factor this feature in if you're considering buying this tool. So that's my review of Longtail Platinum Cloud. I know this is still a fairly new tool in terms of being web-based, but in my opinion, there's quite a few issues that really hold it back at this stage. Even as I was recording this video, I had a lot of stopping and starting, and at one point I lost all access to the tool for several hours. It was just a blank screen with some kind of server error, and that's just what I've experienced in a very short time using this tool. It's just not 100% reliable yet, and I can see that being a massive problem for professionals who are looking for speed and efficiency, because that kind of thing really holds you back. Now, with that said, there's definitely a few things that I think they've done right, and it would be unfair to say that this doesn't have potential, because I think it does. I just feel that until some of those fundamental problems are looked at from a more practical standpoint, and a lot of those early bugs are ironed out as well, it's just not the best option out there right now. Now, if you were considering this tool, I'd actually recommend checking out Keyword Finder instead. As it stands, I think it has a lot more to offer, and I even did a full review on it, which you can find a link to below. So that's it from me. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.